Hello and welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for attending our 2021 Leadership Series kickoff, Big Opportunities and the Pathway to Reimagine, our first in a 5-part series. It's been quite a year, like the understatement of the century, actually. But what better way to come out of the year of the pandemic than with a new name? We are so thrilled to announce that GMIC has evolved, like many other things this year. And we are now the Society for Sustainable Events, SFSE. Keep an eye out for changing branding on all of our channels in the coming weeks. Our mission remains the same: to advocate and educate around sustainability in the meetings and events industry. And our great educational programming, like today's, will continue. Our logo represents SFSE's core values, the color of the UN sustainability goals that guide us in our programming. Circularity is an overarching theme in our community, as you can see by the tree branches reaching out as people connecting, that we provide a place to gather and support each other. For today's event in our series, we celebrate SFSE and friends in the spirit of United Nations SDG goal number 17, partnerships. Many thought leaders and organizers have come together in this time of environmental crisis to unite our industry with a plan and offer big opportunities and the pathways to reimagine. We as an industry have an exponential reach and opportunity to make a difference, and I can't wait. Okay, so let's just do a little bit of housekeeping. Keep yourself on mute throughout the program if you're not talking. And most important, let's take a moment to thank our sponsors. We've got MedEvent hosting on the platform today. Thank you, MedEvent team. Sola Sustainable Hydration, an amazing, amazing product. Talk to Donna Rogers. And Orange Photography for being an award of SFSE and GMIC. And with that, let's get this started. I'd like to introduce the amazing David Fiss and our host. David Fiss, our series leader and host, serves on Sustainable Brands leadership team as the Director of Corporate Partnerships and Event Strategy. A past president of GMIC, he has been instrumental in organizing this series. David, take it away. Okay, so we're just going to take a moment. We're just going to bring David up on audio. So let me just say another word about SFSE. So just going back to the logo. So like I said, we'll be rolling out the new brand. So our website will be updated. Our social channels will be updated. And but for now, just keep an ear out for upcoming programs. You can still look at the old channels and feel free to chat. And okay, we're just getting David's audio rolling. So just one moment. Okay, well, we've got him. Yay. Okay, David, here you go.
Oh, is it all me? Great. Well, thrilled to be here with everyone. Thanks, Anna, for the introduction, which I missed due to technology, but we're all used to that after 14 months of this lifestyle of living.
Okay, sorry, we're having a couple of audio issues. So whose bandwidth is their absolute best friend these days? Okay, we're coming back to David.
Hi, thanks again, Anna. Yes, terrific. So this series was born out of a conversation with Paul Salinger and Chance Thompson, where we imagined what was possible to make a positive impact on the events industry and sustainability. Referencing the sustainable brands theory of change, we took a look at how do we create awareness, encourage engagement, amplify commitment, ensure co-creation, and finally shift the system. And we did that by focusing on carbon consumption supply chain. We've got some amazing thought leaders to present later today. Meantime, I just want to tell you a little bit about the series. This is set to have a decisive program that's different from all other content, and will focus on the discussion pod level to come up to that. So typically cohorts are for C-suite level working groups, but we're introducing this model to serve our industry in critical ways to collaborate and produce positive results that bring our industry in line with others on a social and environmental progress. So in addition to the 5-part program we're offering, series members will be assigned to discussion pod communities led by an industry influencer, and you're going to meet some shortly. Here you'll brainstorm, network, drive results throughout the remainder of the year on opportunities and theme ideas for moving the event industry towards a more sustainable business operations and practice. This is also an invitation to bring your network to the conversation throughout the series. Pricing and more information is available in the chat. Now it's my distinct pleasure to bring my colleagues Paul Salinger and Chance Thompson to the stage to share more with you.
Thank you, David, and hello, everybody. And Chance, great to see you. So let's get this kicked off.
All right. So, hi, everybody. My name is Chance Thompson, and of course, this is Paul Salinger. And we've been kind of talking and talking and talking. So we're ready to do a little bit more talking, but very much excited to do it with all of you today. So, Paul, I'm going to kick us off by asking you a question, a provocative one, I think. What would you say if I said that sustainable events has failed to this point?
Well, Chance, I think I would say that that is a pretty provocative statement, but I would tend to agree. You know, we've been talking about greening meetings and sustainability in the events industry for well over 20 years now. And it's kind of shocking that we haven't made more progress than we have. So, you know, I think that we're all trying to solve for a lot of the same things. And I don't think that we want to spend a lot of time, you know, restating the problem. We all know the problems by now, and we can boil them down to just a few words. Too much carbon emitted, wasteful consumption patterns, supply chains that are not equal and not diverse enough. You know, so the question back is really, is it time to just admit that we failed at being a sustainable industry and come up with an actual solution? You know, it's clear that the take, make, waste model of our current event economy is leading us down a dangerous path. To realize both a flourishing present and future for the events and hospitality industries, events and society must step beyond the status quo. And so you and I have been talking for, you know, quite a while now about a potential solution to this, and maybe a new way of thinking about how we approach sustainability and take it to the next level. So I want you to talk about that.
Yeah, so, you know, I'll start by saying I think the question is overstated a little bit, right? I think the problem with sustainability is that it has been more of an aspiration than I think a system at times. And it's almost an ambition that has in some ways felt too big, I think, and too ambiguous or vague. And so what we're here to kind of lay out as an overarching theme to this series is the idea of circularity, also called circular economics, the donut economy, you know, circular design. There's a bunch of different ways to look at this. So we need to shift to a system that does 3 things in circularity. So first and foremost, we need to figure out how to design out waste and pollution. We need to, number 2, keep the products and materials that we source and use in use so that we don't have to source so many things from the beginning. And then lastly, in doing that, hopefully we can allow our natural systems to regenerate. This is something that the events industry can absolutely do because it's kind of a cyclical model in part as it is, right? Events happen often year to year, right? A ton of the time you've got these same established partnerships that you work with. And so I think it's time for us to start pushing on a little bit more this idea of thinking about how one event connects to the next, rather than so much being this idea of a linear model where it really is about, you know, kind of setting up shop, holding an event, getting rid of everything and then starting over from scratch. And I know a lot of you event professionals out there are saying, well, it's not quite that like basic there, right? Or it's not quite that cut and dry. Of course not, right? There's a lot of things we have to figure out how to do in circularity, but I think by leveraging our partnerships, we can really work into this space. Now, of course, we have three big kind of opportunities we're going to discuss, but one of the things that I want to say as I shift over to Paul to start talking about some tangible examples of what a more circular event economy and event design would look like, is that COVID has shown us something really important. When we have a global crisis of some sort, now COVID is very specific a threat to the face-to-face component of getting together and holding events. However, there's a pretty easy correlation to see with things like climate change and other kind of global crisis and issues and things that we have potentially laying ahead of us. If we have any sort of crisis situation happening around the world, it is going to be a direct impact and a direct threat to the event industry yet again, right? If climate change starts to cause problems with supply chains and local areas and changes the kind of nature of the economy globally, we are once again going to end up in a situation where events will kind of get pushed off or become less priority. That's absolutely a risk and a danger that we face. I don't know, Paul, if you have any responses to that first and foremost, but then let's dive into some examples.
Yeah, let me just add, that I think we're at a point where it's no longer good enough to talk about returning to business as usual. As you said, the world has changed. And we need to transform our industry to become even better at contributing to the social, economic, and ecosystems upon which we all depend. So this is not about repairing the old and patching what's already broken, but to rethink, reimagine, and redesign the new and implement circular and regenerative solutions in the process. In other words, let's move beyond the current phrase of the day, which is build back better, and just build forward better. There is no going back anymore. There is no more reduce, reuse, recycle. It needs to be reduce, reuse, remanufacture, and repair so that, as you said, in terms of the tenets and the principles of circularity, we're keeping products and materials in the cycle, from beginning to end and not throwing stuff into landfill. So, the question is always going to become, okay, how does this then apply to the event industry? And I think we need to be asking ourselves some very critical questions with circularity in mind. What would circular event business models look like? How can we move from linear systems that are extractive and focus on quantity and efficiency, that take, make, and dispose, and from unlimited, uncontrolled growth to a better system that focuses on quality and effectiveness, is circular and resilient by design, is inclusive, reciprocal, and restorative, and focuses on abundance, vitality, harmony, and wellness. In the world of meditation, there's a meta meditation that basically says, be safe, be happy, be healthy, live your life with ease. That's what we all want, and circularity kind of plays into those four principles as well. And there are lots of other questions that we can start to ask. The good news is that circularity is both regenerative and aligns with the UN Sustainable Development Goals, which are aspirational as well and can serve as guideposts for taking us to a circular event economy that is actionable, more diverse, and more equitable. So when it comes to events, there are a number of different things I think that we can look at. There are some very simple and straightforward ways of thinking about circularity. So there's circular supply, taking traditional material inputs that can be replaced by bio-based, renewable, or recovered materials. For example, lanyards and badges made from recycled PET or bamboo. Given the right design and use of materials, these items could also be recovered and reused at subsequent events, again, keeping them out of the landfill. You think about sharing platforms. So collaborations could be created to share equipment between several event organizers. For example, sharing of AV equipment between multiple conference organizers using the same venue in consecutive weeks, which then avoids, putting up one system, taking it down, transporting in a new system, putting up a new system, taking it down. recovery and upside.
Paul,
yeah, please.
If I could jump in there on that concept too. This is something actually Mariella McElroy from the EIC has mentioned a lot, is the idea of clients and event organizers sharing menus as well with caterers, so that there's the same supply chain coming in, one event after the other, right? Same seasonality, same local sourcing, and all those great things if you can figure out how to do those things. So that whole concept of like kind of the sharing economy is really only taking like Uber and Lyft and just applying it to events in a different way, right? Share the resources we have, be efficient with what we already have access to, and making it a more streamlined supply chain. So just an added piece there.
Yeah. And then you got recovery and upcycling. So recycle event waste into secondary raw materials. So for example, convert food waste into biogas to fuel electricity production, or upcycle vinyl signage into attendee bags. That's something that we actually did at Oracle Open World. We took all of our signage, not just the vinyl signage, literally all of our signage, gave it to an upcycler. They turned it into new products, and we managed to avoid putting all of that stuff into landfill. So lots of different types of materials that are used for signage can be recovered and upcycled into new products. And then even product as a service. So products could be leased or rented rather than purchased. For example, modular exhibition stands. Taking that to another level using circularity would also be to produce these kinds of exhibit stands using recovered or recycled materials, so that you're not using virgin materials and building from scratch. So those are just, a few simple examples. But we need to also start thinking bigger and long term, and thinking about some different partnerships that I know you're going to talk about here in a minute, Chance. But, if we rethink carbon and waste, for example, so an example, sort of in the events industry. So in Britain, a hub of cultural initiatives to combat the climate crisis, Opera North in Leeds has been working to reduce its carbon footprint since 2018. It now manages waste through a local company that drives lower emission trucks, and it will eliminate the use of natural gas in its new restaurant space, scheduled to open in October. In February, the theater will present its second set created entirely out of recycled or repurposed materials in a production of Handel's Alcina. So that might be an example of how an event organizer could partner with local trucking companies to transport goods in low emission vehicles and work with local suppliers to produce staging made from repurposed materials rather than virgin materials. Another great example is this idea of anaerobic digesters. So there's a company called Bubbly Dynamics that converted a former meatpacking facility into a hub for local food businesses. And what they're doing is turning organic waste into compost, biogas, and a nutrient-rich liquid in which to grow algae. So they expect to implement a circular economy, a model that could help fight climate change by feeding a rapidly growing urban population with food grown locally using organic methods. This closed-loop system would create little to no waste because materials would be reused, shared, repaired, and refurbished. Now, imagine if convention centers or other large venues were to partner with a local company to create a very local food business that could serve the needs of their clientele and be able to feed any food waste back into a similar closed-loop system. It could be kind of an urban regenerative farming. And if we want to create diversity and equity, it could be done with local minority or women-owned businesses. So those are just some examples. There are tons of other examples. And in actuality, I would love to get feedback from the audience as to other examples that they might have of circularity that they may have seen in the event industry. So let's talk about partnerships for a minute, because I know that's something you're sort of passionate about, and the opportunity for new kinds of partnerships is rampant right now.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think first I'll say, when you look at the Sustainable Development Goals, goal number 17 is partnership. And I'm convinced that that's the most important one, right? We can't create closed loops. We can't build a circular event economy without building partnerships for these things. And so in kind of my past role, and to give my background a little bit. So for the last 5 or 6 years, I helped build the Sustainable Destination Strategy for the city of Salt Lake in Utah in the United States. And One of the things that was of interest was pursuing some sustainability certification. So the Events Industry Council Sustainable Event Standards was the desired choice. And one of the things that we had talked a lot about is how are we going to get the most buy-in possible to build kind of a sustainable community model? And the determination was, well, we need it to be centered around community impact, we think is going to be the best place to go. And so what we started examining is the waste stream, of course, kind of first and foremost, and all these leftover trade show materials that come in. This is not news to anybody that works in the events industry. There's a lot of excess stuff after events. But one of the things we realized is that, you know, the kind of supply and demand balance of that wasn't really there. So we started pursuing new partnerships, nonprofits, to see if they might be interested in taking those things. Now, again, that's not necessarily a new concept, right? A lot of destinations and a lot of events have worked at that kind of year in and year out. What makes it a little bit different is we decided to set it up as a community partnership, as a convention center with these local nonprofits to become not just receivers of materials, but business and like strategy partners in helping us build a more kind of circular destination. So the way this works is, for example, the Utah Arts Alliance had reached out to us and said they were interested in doing something called like an immersive repurposed art exhibit. It's called Dreamscapes. And they ran kind of a test with one of our clients. So they partnered with the client themselves, the convention that was coming in, and then we were able to route all those materials through into their cause. So then they launched this exhibit a couple of months after the event came, and it was so successful that they said, would you guys be interested in helping us launch this as a full-time ongoing exhibit? Well, we did that. And so what it allowed was the events coming in each week, pretty much, right? There was new materials to come in. But what this is it's like 6 or 7 rooms, and you go in, you get kind of immersed in it, and there's artwork all around you, all made from post-consumer recaptured material. Over the first 6 months that they were open, this fairly small nonprofit generated over $500,000 of revenue, added 12 full-time positions, and saved over $100,000 on what would have been material costs. Now, the reason that this comes back up as a circular kind of partnership is that some of the convention clients that come to the Salt Palace year in and year out now act as strategic partners to that nonprofit as well. But there's also other elements of this. So like when the city and Visit Salt Lake as the convention bureau is doing site tours, people go to Dreamscapes to see the whole thing kind of come to life, and they see this. So now there's like this client relations piece that's in play. Now, the other thing I'll mention is you talked about new partnerships. Well, actually, before I go to that, I'll say one more thing about this. So a convention center exists to drive economic impact. That is its primary goal. What we were able to do was expand what that economic impact is, right? So rather than it just being hotels, rather than it just being the food and beverage providers, the entertainers, things like that, we now have it in the nonprofit community across arts programs, school districts, all these different, all kinds of stuff, and pretty much any nonprofit you can kind of imagine. But what that's allowed us to do is expand how Salt Lake County as a municipality measures that economic impact. That is a whole new kind of element of the economy there. And the last thing I'll say is when it comes to partnerships, for anybody that is going to a destination, choosing your partnerships, start asking these questions about zero waste entities, because a lot of cities are starting to have nonprofits and businesses that are coming up to help people that don't know how to build these economies, help them solve some of these problems. They're like upcycling wizards and masters and companies and all kinds of crazy things going on. And so start asking those questions about what kind of companies exist at the local level that can help you solve, for example, your waste problem, or like you spoke about, right, carbon problems, things like that. So, yeah.
Yeah, that's a fantastic story. I love that story. And again, I think that it's a great example of how you can create social and economic benefits by creating this kind of an economy and these kinds of partnerships. So let's dive in and talk a little bit about this series, which David touched on a little bit and Anna touched on a little bit as well. But let's talk a little bit about why we chose kind of the topics and the themes that we are going to talk about. So, as David alluded to, we've been having this conversation for a little while between Chance and myself and the folks from SFSE. And as we started to look at it, we said, let's really focus on kind of what are the biggest issues within the event industry that we need to solve for. The biggest one, obviously, is carbon. Carbon is, kind of the big elephant in the room, if you will. The fact that we fly all over the place, the fact that we transport stuff all over the place, we are an industry that is contributing to the problem more than helping to solve the problem at this point. But that's not to say that we can't help solve the problem. And that's one of the things that we want to be able to explore as we go along. The second thing that we looked at was the problem with consumption. We just consume too much stuff and we waste too much stuff. We give out lots of promotional things, half of which probably ends up in landfill or left behind at an event venue. We waste food. There are just numerous things that we waste as an industry. So how do we start to change the behavior of our attendees and all of our other stakeholders to rethink what we're consuming, how we're consuming, and how we're disposing of things? And then thirdly, is looking at our supply chains as a whole. The industry's been talking for a while now about diversity, equity, and inclusion, but a lot of it has really been talk. And we need to really start understanding what are some ways that we can really bring diversity and equity into our supply chains. Maybe it's by going to different destinations. Maybe it's by having different partners. Maybe it's by using different suppliers. I think that's one of the things that we want to be able to explore in this series. The series has really laid out to be a combination of educational sessions around those three topics of carbon, consumption, and supply chain diversity, as well as these complementary cohort discussion pods, I think is what we're ending up calling them. And that's really the big opportunity here, the opportunity for peer-to-peer networking and collaboration so that collectively we can come up with really good ideas. Collectively, we can start, coming up and brainstorming and figure out what are the actionable items that we can actually do as an industry collectively. Are there goals that we should be creating collectively that we can all work towards? So I would really encourage you all to seriously consider signing up for the entire series. At $99, it's incredibly affordable. And, too often in this industry, we don't invest in ourselves enough, in our professional development. And this is an opportunity to invest in yourself and invest in the success and the thriving of our industry as we move forward after COVID. So,
if I could, Paul, jump in
sure.
Yeah, I was just going to jump in and say, for anybody out there that is listening to us talk about some kind of high level, using a lot of big terms and, catchy words and things like that, right? It's really important that everybody understands that none of us really know fully how to get to where it is we're trying to get to, right? And we haven't. Sustainability is the same thing. But there's this aspiration still that is really humming, and there's now this desire to build forward, right? Build forward, look to the next kind of wave of things. And frankly, for the events industry, kind of having an opportunity to lead out on the cutting edge of what all business and industry sectors across the world are going to start trying to figure out how to do is creating these systems that are more resilient, more thoughtful. And circularity to me actually is more of a philosophy than anything. You can even think about this idea of shifting to a circular system being about people too, figuring out how to build stronger and more steady relationships and partnerships that kind of recycle themselves and keep regenerating each other as you go along. And so when you think about regenerating natural systems as a part of what circular kind of design is, it can be regenerating human systems as well. So what I would say is you don't have to know anything about any of this stuff, because that actually might be a really valuable thing, because there's going to be a lot of we make a lot of assumptions and stuff for people that work in the sustainability space every single day. Having somebody that is just coming in to learn, fresh and new, can be a whole wonderful perspective to bring. So don't feel like you have to know about circular economics or sustainable event design or anything like that. Have some passion show up and we'll all start working together, and we will keep talking. But it is talking, hopefully leading to some sort of real actions and real progress. That's all I would say. That's
right. Yeah, those are great points. And to that point, we absolutely, in the discussion groups, hope that we will have some, outcomes that everybody can take away and can start to take action on. So what we want to do now is we actually want to bring up the leaders for these cohort discussion pods one by one and just have a quick conversation with them, let them describe what their topic is going to kind of focus on in the discussion groups over the next 5 or 6 months. And so let's start with carbon. Carbon is a big problem, as I said. 100 billion tons of materials enter the global economy every year. 50 billion tons of that are greenhouse gas emissions, of which carbon is the largest quantity. We don't know how much of that is attributable to the event and hospitality industry, but we do know that air travel accounts for roughly 90% of emissions for live events. So can we collectively think about how to best be a part of the solution for both the environment and for the people in the communities we serve? So in this discussion group, we're going to hopefully explore the differences between what it means to draw down carbon versus offsetting carbon. And those are two very different things. They're both viable options, but we want to start to think about drawdown almost more than offsetting, and why that might actually be one of the keys to the very survival of the event industry. So I'd like to introduce right now Yilmaz Siddiqui, who is going to be the leader of the carbon cohort pod discussion. Welcome, Yilmaz. Great to see you.
Thank you, Paul. Thank you, Chance.
So why don't you tell us a little bit about, you've been working on kind of this carbon issue for a while now with the Event Industry Council. Why don't you tell us a little bit about kind of what you're seeing in terms of both what the problem is and what maybe some potential thoughts that you have around it, and how you see, running your cohort pod discussion, and encouraging people to join you in that discussion.
Sure. Thank you again, Paul and Chance, and thanks everyone for joining. The discussion series that we'll be addressing is climate and carbon, and really ultimately how to think about the impact on climate of the industry, the events that we host, and how to best, over the long run, alleviate the carbon impact of our industry while maintaining a vibrant, thriving, live, virtual, and hybrid sector. So the big questions, the things we plan to discuss are really, what does this community of event professionals who are interested in sustainability, and perhaps sustainability professionals interested in events, want or need in terms of climate action and guidance? And Paul, you introduced the EIC, Events Industry Council, and in a way, I envision this series that SFSE is organizing as almost an extended focus group of industry practitioners who can give input into work we're doing actually at the Event Industry Council Center for Sustainability and Social Impact, in the committee that I chair within that international cross-industry group. And so this extended focus group, as part of this discussion series, can give input into what should EIC be advocating for in terms of an industry-wide goal that's global and the sector can get behind, and what guidance is desired by industry practitioners at various levels of understanding regarding climate. So in the EIC Center for Sustainability and Social Impact roadmap that will be shared in the coming months, guidebooks on climate, including measuring carbon footprints and understanding the different elements of carbon and how to draw down and how to offset credibly. That will all be part of content, and some of the discussions that we'll be holding as part of this series will feed into and inform those deliverables. So I think that's really the summary of my intro to climate and how I conceive of this series interacting with and helping inform broader global industry-wide efforts on climate and climate action. Back to you.
Thank you, Yilmaz. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah,
and I think, what's so exciting about this, I think, is that the industry, so many people across the events industry are talking about carbon, but being able to have it at an industry level conversation to start really challenging the larger kind of economic model of the events industry, and also maybe even challenging airlines. Like, we need to find solutions to these problems so that the events industry can be more sustainable and more circular by nature. And so having these kind of high level industry kind of conversations will be really helpful, so that then all the people that are passionate about carbon reduction will be able to take action. So very exciting. Okay, so now we're going to shift over to consumption. And this, I think, is the most direct, immediate opportunity we actually have to address our carbon problem too, because if we're smarter about how we're managing our consumption, we will inherently bring down some of our carbon impacts as well. So very, very excited to bring up Melinda Kendall, who is formerly of Freeman and now with Sustainable Brands, and has just a wonderful approach to examining our wonderful consumption challenges in the events industry. So Melinda, tell us a little bit about kind of what your philosophy and mindset is around managing materials, maybe a little bit about like localized strategies, but also then how you do it on a wider scale, and tell us a little bit about how you're going to run your breakout and cohort going forward.
Sure, thank you. So excited to be working on this. I mean, you've been talking about big opportunities, and is there really a bigger opportunity for climate change and sustainability in the event industry than consumption and waste? The event industry has actually been accused of being the second most wasteful industry in the United States, and that's really not who we want to be. But this is a big topic. We can look at it in terms of the stakeholders, the exhibitors, the event organizers, the venue, the attendees. We can look at it in terms of the materials, whether it's food, the 3 Ps, polyethylene film, PVC, and polystyrene signs. Carpet, of course, my personal favorite of all the tons of carpet. We don't even know how many tons of carpet our industry throws away every year. We can look at it in terms of materials that include a high percentage of recycled material. Well, we've been there and we've gotten as far as we can. We can look in terms of recycling, repurposing. But as Chance alluded to, my favorite is to look in terms of partnerships drive true circularity. There are several companies like Trex, Polywood, that make decking and lawn furniture out of used polystyrene and not polystyrene, polyethylene and PVC. The challenge we have is creating the partnerships across our industry to solve the logistics problems of collecting them, taking out the air so that they can ship in an efficient way, so that the shipping of that material back to the repurposing facilities doesn't cost materials themselves. So just one example of a partnership idea. So what I envision for this workshop and this breakout is through the various materials and stakeholders and opportunities. I think we'll want to start with what's the appropriate goal, right? What is the zero waste goal for the industry, or several zero waste goals for the industry? And then what would it take to achieve those, and work through together what are the biggest issues that face us that we can actually solve in this group, whether it's creating guidelines for the industry, whether it's actually creating the partnerships, and see if we can actually take a chip out of this problem together. Back to you guys.
All right, thank you, Melinda. I'm going to throw the challenge right out to you. I think the goal for the event industry should be 0 to landfill by 2030. So I want your group to figure out how we get there. Okay, so
there's
supply
some
chain.
aspiration for you.
Yeah, there's some aspiration for you. So supply chain. our last but certainly not least topic. It's kind of about building equitable partnerships and destinations. A few questions. Is our current approach and systems to procuring and nurturing suppliers really working? Is it as diverse and equitable as we would want it to be? A transition to circular thinking calls for creative innovation in systems design and rigorous collaboration across and within value and supply chains and among multiple stakeholders. So it's time to rethink our approach to supply chains, and there was nobody better to do that than Dr. Aurora Dawn Benton. So Aurora, welcome to the stage, and you have a big task here, because I think that the conversation around diverse supply chains has not been at the forefront as much as it probably should be, and there's a lot of work to do there. And so why don't you tell us what you're thinking about, and why you think that we're going to solve this problem?
Absolutely. Thank you so much for inviting me to be a part of this. I love this topic. I'm so excited to be having a conversation with you about it. I think that what you said earlier, I'm going to just sort of paraphrase your comments. I think it has been a lot of all talk and no action. And I don't think that's because people don't care. I mean, I think if of any of the topics, this is one where people's heartbeat and their passion really is genuinely to move the supply chain into a more diverse, status. But I think that people don't really have a handle on what the true barriers are. Part of that is a lot of companies don't even have a baseline for this. So, business 101, like if you don't have your baseline, how do you set your goals, and how do you, set realistic goals and then move forward from there? And there are some inherent challenges to working towards making your supply chain more local, diverse, and fair. And some of those challenges are somewhat grounded in myths, and some of them are very realistic. So, and the solutions to them are all pragmatic and doable, I think. So for example, cost often comes up. It's more expensive to buy from local or smaller vendors, and sometimes, yes, that might be true, but I think it's time that we have to step back and say, really, that's it? You're just going to throw out the cost card and the conversation's over? No, we have to be able to, I think, set some expectations that you can't just get away with saying like, oh, well, it costs more, so that's that. Another challenge is contracts. I hear this all the time. Companies get incentivized by very large national and global players. They have a lot of deep marketing pockets that they can throw some extra dollars your way to get you to sign a contract. And that's very common, and it's very, very challenging for a small, local, diverse supplier to compete with that. So again, we have to stop the copy paste mentality. We have to say, are we going to keep doing business as usual, or are we going to build back forward or build forward, as you said earlier? And so I would say, for one of the other barriers that tends to come up, Paul, I would love to just go back to a couple of the examples you gave earlier. You talked about what if different planners could coordinate across a company to share resources, or what if they could take event materials and repurpose them? Well, oftentimes the companies that win those deals are the same companies that you've been doing business with over and over and over again, which means they're either larger, national, global brands, or they are the local business that you've been working with for a long time, and that's great, but they're local, so you check the box and that's it. And the reason that we're not going out and using a social enterprise or an underrepresented or disadvantaged business is that the capacity of those businesses to reach you is challenging. They don't get the same bank loans that other businesses do. They don't have the same resources and skill sets necessarily. And so I think we have to sort of build a bridge, and we have to make more efforts to go out to where they are and find them and nurture them and bring them into the supply chain and show them that this is a new line of business and a really great opportunity for them to be able to get the resources they need to grow and expand their business. So what I hope to do in this conversation is be super practical. I'm all about the practical. So I really want to get right at what's in our way. And is it just a lack of awareness and knowledge and tools? Let's build them. And so I would see maybe the output of this being something like a roadmap. I loved Yelma's comment earlier about, this is sort of a focus group and it can be input to what other organizations are doing. Perhaps we're, in 6 months able to sort of draft our own version of some sort of roadmap that shows us, how would we find and vet good local vendors? And if they're not there, how do we create an opportunity to incubate those businesses? And then I think another great potential outcome would be some RFP toolkits. What are the questions and requirements that you should be asking your suppliers to push diversity into the entire, and fairness? I should also add, I include fair as part of this as well, into the entire supply chain. So I'll leave it in that. I hope that you'll join me, and I look forward to working together. This is going to be definitely roll up your sleeves. We're going to use some visual tools. We're going to work, and we're going to produce something very cool. So thank you again for the opportunity.
It wouldn't be work with Aurora if we were not working. I think, amazing. I think one thing I wanted to mention in that too is that, there's this really amazing book written by a woman named Kate Rayworth called Donut Economics. And one of the things that it talks a lot about is like the inner ring of a donut being the social foundation where humans have all their essential needs and have equality and balance in who is representing the economy and who is succeeding and thriving, and really all of us should. So what Aurora is talking about there, and where supply chain lands, is the opportunity to build that strong social foundation for the events industry. So really cool. Okay, yeah. So we're going to segue here into our breakouts.
If I can just jump in for one second.
Yeah, go ahead, Paul.
Let me just jump in for 1 second. And if you join Aurora, she will give you a great example of a company in Australia that did a circularity experiment where they basically took one street in one city in Australia and turned it into a circular economy. It's a fantastic story. And, it just, again, shows, thinking differently about this. We could certainly, start to imagine that you could take an event, a specific event, and turn it into a circular event economy with lots of thinking and lots of innovation and lots of collaboration. So I just wanted to throw that in there to plug that a little bit.
Yeah, a good sneak peek. All right. So we're going to work our way towards the breakouts here. And I think we're going to bring David Fisk back up with us. So while they do that, Paul, I guess we got so excited we started off, we were going to talk about who we are. So we'd love to hear, who are you? Why should people listen to you? Because we are going to be jumping into these breakouts and challenging and asking questions and things. So you should probably know who we are and why we're being a pain in the breakouts, because that's kind of our plan. Yeah. So Paul, tell us just a little bit about you as David comes up with us.
Yeah. So Paul Salinger, I used to work at Oracle. I was a VP of marketing. But over the last 8 years that I was there, from 2013 on, I became kind of the sustainability champion for the event marketing department, and really implemented all the best practices that happen in the city of San Francisco now, worked very closely with the supply chain in San Francisco. And during that time, I also was a board member of the Green Meeting Industry Council, which now is a part of the Event Industry Council. I was president of that for 2 years. So I've been involved in sustainability for events for, 8 or 9 years at this point. And, I've spoken on the topic, numerous conferences. I'm very passionate about it. And even though I'm now retired from Oracle, I am not retired from life, and I am not retired from this topic. I'm going to continue to keep my voice in it and keep pushing on the event industry to, adopt best practices, adopt sustainable practices, adopt circular practices. So that's who I am. That's my background a little bit. Chance?
Okay. Yeah, great. So, Paul is one of the visionary leaders we've had for a very long time, honestly. As I mentioned, I built the Sustainable Destination Strategy for the City of Salt Lake with just an amazing Green Team committee across 5 organizations there. I also have been participating for the last 4 years on the kind of redesign, rewrite, and relaunching of the EIC Sustainable Event Standards, and served as the chair of that effort at one point to do the relaunch of the provisional version of the standards. And I am now out on my own with a company called Viridescent that is building what we call immersive sustainability. That's kind of a counterculture to the sustainability community, where sometimes we might just be talking about our sustainability alter egos, reading comic books that are built around sustainability. and someday, hopefully, turning it all into a trade show we call the Veraverse. So stay tuned for more to come on that. But David Fiss, come up, join us, and let's work our way towards the breakouts.
The Veraverse, I love it. It's like the Marvel Comics of sustainability and events. I can't wait till you have like a domination of the entire entertainment industry. Well, from here, we're going to move to our discussion pods, but just want to take a moment to thank Paul and Chance. They've put an incredible amount of effort behind the scenes into really trying to establish both a North Star and a pathway to that North Star of a circular and sustainable events industry and economy for, business and people. So at this time, you're going to navigate in the platform to carbon with Yalmaz, or consumption with Melinda, or supply chain with Aurora. You heard great topics from each. Don't feel like whatever you pick today is where you have to live forever. It's a start of the conversation. What you may find is that when we move into July, you want to go to 2 or 3 different cohort discussion groups throughout the month and join different conversations because you find value in all the topics. Or you may nudge a colleague at your office, which we don't have offices right now, but you may nudge someone in your network to join a discussion group and a topic that you feel passionate about, but don't have time to attend yourself because you're maybe focused on carbon and you want to encourage someone else to come in on consumption. So I think from here, we're just going to navigate to those places. Anna Marie or Chance, let me know if I'm wrong, but I think we're just going to go at it now.
Well, that was a whirlwind.
It was terrific. I popped around to 2 rooms. What about you, gentlemen?
I managed to make it to all 3, although the last one I was only in for a few minutes. So I hope that everybody sees the value behind what it is that we've set up here with this leadership series. Clearly, there is so much more to talk about. These are big, complex problems and big, complex opportunities. And we want to take these opportunities and turn them into pathways and reimagine the way that we approach sustainability, the way that we approach our event economies, all of those kinds of things. Chance, one thing that we didn't do up front was kind of talk about some of the themes that we wanted to bring into each of the breakout or the cohort discussion pods as we go forward. Do we want to hit on those very quickly here?
Yeah. Let's go through the list here. So we've got 5 of them. So we have, of course, diversity, equity, quality, inclusion. We really need to figure out how to take action in that space, and it is a difficult one, right? It's a lot harder to measure and make change there, but we must do it. We have partnership, of course, and I think that one of the things about partnership is we really encourage all of you to bring people with you, connect the dots as much as possible. One of the things that happens is we get siloed in sustainability action. That's one of the reasons I was very excited to hear Yalmaz talk about, like, this is an extension of some of the work that EIC is doing. We need to connect these dots and these partnerships that are taking action on these things. Because if we keep doing awesome things separately, we won't make the rapid, big change, but also the localized change that is needed. And then we also really want you to kind of think about yourselves as agents of change. I would call it a sustainability superhero of sorts, right? If you care about this stuff, you find ways to increase your knowledge, your professional development, your education, things like that. So there'll be a lot of opportunities for you to do that by participating in this. And then business commitments. So one of the best things you can do as an agent of change, as a representative of your business, is to educate yourself in the kind of roadmap of going towards a place of being able to get your business to take strong commitments and stances on being zero waste, zero carbon, building a more diverse supply chain and partnership model. Really, really important. And it's also, I think, really important for businesses of the current and the present to be very transparent and accountable for both the things they're good at and the things they're not so good at, because cancel culture is kind of brutal. The best way to combat cancel culture is to be honest. Be honest about what you're good at and what you're not good at, and then work towards improvement as you go. And then lastly, we'll consider, go ahead. No, please, Paul, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, one of the things that I always loved about the sustainability reports that we did when I was at Oracle is working with Meet Green. They did a great job of basically laying out all the good things that we did, but all the opportunities for improvement as well. And I think that that's part of like the transparency. I was always very transparent about sharing our sustainability report. And I would encourage everybody to share your results. You know, when you measure things, share it back out to the industry, because that's how we all learn from each other.
Yeah, I think vulnerability and failure
David, go ahead.
are key to learning. We've seen this in business practices and other communities where we're sharing best practices. Sharing a failure is often to the next person or your own success. And I think also, I think there's a new appreciation, not for setting 2050 goals, but for being vulnerable about the moment and what we can achieve now and what we're doing going forward. So I think those are themes that can also underline the work we're doing here.
Yeah.
And that is a really nice connection to kind of our last theme, which is, of course, we're going to talk about COVID impacts, right? What kind of new barriers are in front of us, new opportunities and things as we go. But in talking about like businesses of the future being honest ones and you know, ones that are full of purpose and driven towards kind of a better world, COVID has been a heavy crisis for our industry. There's not many industries on this planet that have been impacted as much by COVID is the events industry. Healthcare, certainly one of them, of course, or probably the most so. But our industry needs some good stories to tell. It needs some exciting things to kind of build forward with. And sustainability and circularity and diversity and all these amazing things that we have in front of us, like this is finally the time for us to be able to really take that stuff to a next level, to a place that our industry professionals absolutely need to experience and participate in as we build forward. It isn't just about returning to business as it was. It is about moving forward.
Yeah, and I think you can all see that, you know, there is clearly much more that can be said about all of this, much more work to be done. But both Chance and I are incredibly optimistic about, you know, the way forward. But the time to start is now. You know, as we've said at the beginning, you know, we've been talking about this stuff and doing some stuff for years and years. The time to really get started is now. And so let's all roll up our sleeves and get to work. And hopefully you all will join us for the whole series and jump into the cohort pod discussions. And, you know, let's all collectively create a great future for the event industry. And so, David, I'll let you have the last word and turn it back to Anna.
Sure. Well, and before we do that, I just want to ask you, gentlemen, I've got some thoughts on our ability to kind of grow this, expand the network. Maybe you both can speak about our ability to be iterative, lend to other things like workbooks, tool books, things of that nature, our willingness to partner with other associations, and the network effect here that real change only happens at a systemic level. So kind of all these are prompts to say, how can we use today to encourage more people to get involved as we unroll this leadership series really over the next, I think it's 6 months.
Yeah, sure. I you know, as Chance said, I mean, you know, part of this is let's all stop working in silos. Let's actually work together to solve some of these issues. So whether it be, you know, through the guidebooks that Yalma has talked about for the Event Industry Council, whether it be working with PCMA, MPI, any of the event associations, also working within the corporate world. I mean, I belong to a cross-tech sustainability group that includes, you know, some big companies like Google and Salesforce and Zendesk and Autodesk and PwC. You know, we need to bring those voices into this conversation as well. So I would just encourage everybody, if this has been of interest to you, and if you think that there's work that you want to work on, invite your friends, bring more people into this conversation. More is better. I think we can get a lot done.
Terrific. More is better. I would add, and go ahead, Chance.
I was just going to add one thing, is just that we need to have an attitude of none of us should take no as an absolute, as a, you know, a time to stop, or we just got to do things the way we did them because of this or that or whatever. If you're having a hard time finding a solution, networks and groups like these are such an important place to be, because there is somebody else who has faced the exact type of challenge that you are facing right now. So reach out to people, participate in groups like this. I mean, even just post to LinkedIn and say, hey, here's the barrier, here's the challenge I'm having. Does anybody have any creative solutions to these problems? just don't take no for an answer. We can't anymore. We must push through the barriers.
Agreed. Well, with that, gentlemen, I want to thank you for the amount of time and energy that you've put into it. I would say like a glacier, there's what everyone sees above the surface, but you've put a tremendous amount of time into the theory and thought from very early on.
Uh-oh. I think we may have lost David.
Close.
Am I back?
Yeah, you're back.
You're back.
Nope, he's gone. Yeah, so at that point, just thank you all for attending today. Let's throw it back to Anna to help close out the event. Thanks so much.
Sorry we lost David right when he was about to say really nice things. So I'll say them again for him. Thank you guys so much. That was absolutely incredible. What an incredible conversation today. And thank you all for participating, for being here. We really hope that you'll join. Let me just take a moment before we get into those details. Let's thank our sponsors one more time. I'd like to thank MedEvent and the team for keeping this running today on the platform. Solus, Sustainable Hydration, chat to Donna and she can talk to you all about it, and Orange Photography for supporting us all these years. Thank you so much to our sponsors. We cannot do this without them. So if you want to continue the conversation, which we hope you will, please register for the series. You can email us if you need information. If you haven't registered already, also you should see on the screen a handy QR code for ease, so you can go ahead and just snap that and register now. We'd love to have you continue the conversation that we started today. And I want to take a moment to thank the board and the education committee, our speakers and program designers, for all the hours and diligent work that they put into bringing this program to life. It really has been a labor of love, and passion fuels it. And that's very evident with everybody here. And it inspires me. And I think it's just incredible to be a part of. So we look forward to the next installment of the series on August 3rd. Register and join us. And I just want to say one last little word that I'm actually terming out as president, and you'll start to see a new board and leadership for SFSE. If any of this inspired you to join SFSE, we are also looking for committee members and future leaders. So please feel free to ping me or anyone else. We can get you some information, and we'd love to get you involved in leadership and keeping this conversation going. And we will be introducing our new president soon, Christoph. And you can feel free to send him a quick chat and congrats that he's going to be taking the reins. So keep an eye out for that and our newsletter. And we'll be sending you guys updates soon. And just thank you. I can't thank you enough. And let's go make some change.